Hello everyone. Today I'm going to take up the topic in research methodology, the concepts which are important in the context of a research design. Being a research student, you should be aware of these concepts. So we are going to take up the concepts of independent variable, dependent variable, constant, and control group. Firstly, let's define what these concepts are. Let's understand what these concepts are. When you talk of independent variable, these are the variables which are being controlled by a experimenter. He can control these variables so as to study the effect of these on the dependent variable. Whenever a hypothesis is being formed, in that hypothesis, the if part states the independent variable. When you talk of dependent variable, these are the variables which cannot be controlled by a experimenter. The reason is that these variables give action, reaction, or response to whatever the manipulation or changes which are being done on the independent variable. They are whole and sole dependent on independent variables. Whenever a hypothesis is being formed, the then part of hypothesis states the dependent variable. Then there are constants variable. The constant variables are those variables which cannot be changed by the experimenter at the time when a research or when an experiment is being conducted. When then the question arises, whenever an experiment is being conducted, that experiment is being compared to whom? So, for comparative study of that experimental group, a control group is also there. This control group states that it forms a standard. It states that it is the parameter to which the experiment would be compared to. To get a proper insight of this particular concept of variables, I'll take an example. I'll take an example in which an experimenter is trying to study the effect of fertilizers on the plant's growth. For that, I have made an independent variable, constant, dependent variable chart. Being an experimenter, now what will I study in this particular experiment? Firstly, I have to form a control group. The control group would be that particular plant in which no fertilizer is being used. Now, in this particular experiment, we are going to study and compare that if a particular amount of fertilizer is being used, then what would be the effect of that fertilizer on a plant's growth. Starting with, the fertilizer would be the independent variable. The reason why is that the fertilizers are in direct control of our experimenter. He has the full liberty to choose the amount of fertilizer it is going to use in that particular plant. The dependent variable would be the plant's growth. An experimenter cannot play or cannot control the growth of the plant because the growth of the plant is dependent on the amount of fertilizer being used in this particular experiment. The constant variables would be the amount of water, the type of soil, amount of soil, the type of plant, size of plant, the light, location, weather. These are the variables which are not being touched by the experiment. Only the effect of fertilizer on plant growth is being witnessed. I'll start with experiment. Being an experimenter, I will use no fertilizer on a plant and see what would be the growth of the plant. I'll write it down. Then I'll use a fertilizer and 2 drops of fertilizer I'll use. Then I'll see the effect of that on the growth of plant. Then I'll keep on increasing the ratio of fertilizers on the plant. And I'll note down the effect of these fertilizers on the plant's growth. So through this experiment or through this particular example, we are trying to understand the relevance of independent variable and dependent variable and constant variables. So we can conclude that the fertilizers are independent variables because it can be manipulated, it can be controlled by an experimenter, and the effect of these fertilizers is being studied through the effect of these on the growth of the plant. In research also, we are doing the same thing. We are taking up a particular group, we keep certain factors variable, we independent variables, and we keep certain factors as dependent variable, and then by controlling the independent variables we try to identify what the effect or the consequences of it on the dependent variable, and we try to conclude our research work. Thank you very much.